going on, guys? It's Cimo. So today I'm bringing to you a guide on how to beat Gouki. Yesterday we did a guide on how to beat Sky Striker, and since we're in the middle of the Nationals and WCQ format, I figured we'd just run the whole gamut and cover all of the best decks and some of the best strategies on how to beat them. So before we get into that, I'm going to give a huge shout out to my newest patrons as always. So big shout out today to Stuart. You are the reason that this channel is growing strong. If you guys want to help support me in the channel through Patreon, then check out the Patreon link in the description below. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get right into it. So behind Sky Striker Trickstar, Gouki's probably the second most popular deck of the format, and for good reason. You know, if a deck is able to extra link you like this, basically make it so you can't target anything, can't kill anything in battle, can't destroy anything by card effects, you have a Tri-Gate Wizard to worry about, sometimes there's a Griffin preventing your special summon monsters from activating effects. Yeah, that sucks pretty bad, but that doesn't mean the deck is unbeatable, and that's why I wanted to cover that today. Especially here in North America with Linkuriboh being legal, Gouki's probably going to have a much higher representation than it might in other regions where Linkuriboh is not legal. However, that doesn't take away from the fact that Gouki is still a very good deck. It's been able to accrue numerous tops at both the Nationals and the WCQs that have taken place thus far, and that's solidified itself as the second best deck. So, we're going to be starting off with how to prevent Gouki from even getting to this monstrosity of a board in the first place. And obviously the way we're going to be doing that is through hand traps. So I figure we just start with Ashe Blossom because Ashe Blossom is pretty much the most universally best hand trap of this format, and so I figure it makes the most sense, since most likely your deck's going to be incorporating it, to have Ashe Blossom be the first point of discussion. Now, Ashe Blossom's really good because if you're able to hit a card like Isolde with Ashe Blossom, it puts them in a very awkward position, because denying their ability to special summon the Octo Stretch off of the Isolde means that they're gonna basically need an extender in order to continue on with their plays. Ashe Blossom can also hit some other things like the engrave effects of the Goukis, but for the most part, I wouldn't say, unless you're in a simplified game state, that's the best idea. You're primarily going to be hitting Isolde, because even though they might have that extender to continue on with their plays, it's kind of like hitting Spiral Double Helix in Spiral with Ashe Blossom, because even if they can continue playing, their board is going to be nearly as difficult to deal with if you didn't have that Ashe Blossom for the Isolde. So that's very good. One of the things you do have to worry about, though, when it comes to hand traps is the fact that Gouki is notorious for being able to chain block. So for those of you who don't know what chain blocking is structuring your chain links in such a way when you have multiple triggers to protect some of your card's activations from being able to be negated from cards like Ashe Blossom or anything that has to be used directly in response to the effect of a monster being activated. So, say for instance you have something like Isolde being Chainlink 1, and then you've got two Gouki monsters like Super X and Twist Cobra as Chainlink 2 and 3. You're not going to be able to respond directly to the activation of Isolde, which means in that instance you're not going to be able to use Ashe Blossom to be able to stop them from searching. But even though it's going to be better off stopping the special summon from the deck by sending the equip spells, it's one of those instances where Gouki is going to try to manipulate their chain links as best they can to help protect them from any of your hand traps. So that's going to be something to keep in mind as we progress further into this video. Now, Droll Lockbird is probably the second most popular hand trap of the format, and it's actually pretty good against Gouki. Gouki relies a lot on searching an immense amount of cards because it needs those resources to continuously spit them out in order to make more link monsters. And so if you hit them with the Droll Lockbird, it's going to put them in a pretty awkward position because they're not going to be able to accrue more resources, and then their board is just going to be rather lackluster. Now, there is one big downside to Droll Lockbird here, and that is the fact that it is a -1. You're not really taking anything away from your opponent when you use Droll Lockbird, and that's kind of the big downside of it. When you use Droll Lockbird, sure, you might halt them in their tracks, but because you're not taking any advantage away from them, if you're not able to capitalize on the fact that you're able to stop them by being able to set up your own board with a lot of reactive or disruptive cards, then on their next turn, they're just going to follow up and be able to continue where they left off. So the important thing with Droll Lockbird to realize is that, yes, it's very powerful, but you need to have something to back it up, because if you don't, Droll Lockbird was just a waste of a card, and it's much better off being something else entirely. Another good pair of hand traps against this deck are Effect Veiler and Infinite Impermanence. Now, we just mentioned chain blocking and how effective Gouki is at doing so, but Effect Veiler and Infinite Impermanence do not care about chain blocking because they don't have to be used directly in response to the the effect activated of a monster. Say for instance, with the example used before, you got something like Isolde being chain link 1, then you've got Gouki, Suprex, and Twist Cobra as 2 and 3. You can chain Impermanence or your effect Valor as chain link 4, then when the chain resolves backwards, Valor or Impermanence will negate the Isolde, they get their 2 searches off of the 2 Gouki monsters, but then the Isolde will be negated. So there is an advantage here to playing something like Valor or Impermanence to be able to stop cards like Isolde from being able to special summon out monsters, and again, put them in that really awkward position where they're not really able to progress unless they have 1 or more extenders. Now, Infinite Impermanence is especially powerful here because since Gouki is such a heavy combo deck, without a doubt they're going to be maxing out on 3 copies of Called by the Grave. So where Infinite Impermanence really shines here is that you're able to dodge Called by the Grave because Infinite Impermanence doesn't have to go to the graveyard for cost, it's also not a monster, which means that Called by the Grave won't be able to banish it and negate its effects, and they don't have a way to really play around a card like Impermanence. So if you don't have Impermanence, even though it's definitely more expensive than Valor, Valor will do, but Impermanence definitely has a lot of value in that matchup over a card like Valor. So if you have the Impermanence, you'll definitely want them for this particular matchup. Another card that's pretty effective is Ghost Bell. Now, Ghost Bell can be used to stop the activation of Gouki Rematch, which realistically, if you can stop Rematch is also only once per turn, that's gonna just pretty much stop their plays entirely because they really need those extra resources to continue comboing off unless they just drew the absolute craziest hand ever. Their board's gonna be rather lackluster and you're gonna be in a pretty advantageous position. Now, what's also good about Ghost Bell, since we've already established Gouki's gonna be running multiple copies of Called by the Grave, Ghost Bell can negate Called by the Grave, which means, let's say you have another trap in tandem with Ghost Bell, you can use that hand trap, let's say they chain Called by the Grave, and then you can chain Ghost Bell targeting the Called by the Grave, negate the Called by the Grave, your hand trap will go through, and then you're going to be set to go off. So there's also a very strong advantage to running Ghost Bell solely because you can negate Called by the Grave, and you can pretty much safely assume that every Gouki player is going to be maxing out on that card. But the last and probably the strongest hand trap going up against Gouki is Ghost Reaper and Winter Cherries. Now, the reason I say that is because with Cherries you can hit Isolde, you could also hit Firewall Dragon. Firewall Dragon is the other Achilles heel of this deck because if they're not able to assemble Firewall Dragon, they're not going to be able to abuse the special summon effect to gather the resources they need to continuously link off and assemble their extra link board. So hitting either Isolde or Firewall are very good options and kind of just solve the problem entirely because by removing Isolde or removing Firewall, they're not really replaceable and they're not going to have many options outside of that, so it's kind of just this silver bullet card that really solves the problem. Now, it is susceptible to Called by the Grave and you do have to have the extra deck spaces to accommodate these cards, but realistically, it might be worth it because it can just stop Gouki dead in its tracks. Now, I wanted to discuss some options for going first. Let's say you have the ability to maybe set up to prevent them from assembling just some crazy OTK, or maybe being able to assemble a crazy board after attempting to break your own. A card like Shared Ride is incredibly powerful against this deck since the Gouki cards really rely on searching more cards from the deck continuously and also recurring a card like Divine Sword Phoenix Blade from the graveyard. So by being able to do that, you're gonna basically put them in that awkward position where they don't want to give you cards because then that's more cards that they can use to defeat you, but they have to break over your board or set up their own, otherwise they're going to lose. And that paradoxical situation is really the pressure you want to put on them because that might force them to make mistakes or suboptimal plays, and that's going to give you the best advantage you could ever hope for. There's also the Solemn Brigade. The Solemn Brigade is particularly effective because with cards like Strike, Warning, as well as Judgment, if you're able to stop them from going into cards like Invoker, Isolde, really any of the good starter combo like, extra deck pieces that they might need, hell, you can even stop one of their normal summons. That could be another good way to stop them just from even starting off in the first place. That's going to be a very effective way since the deck is so monster reliant. And so by being able to cripple their first initial play of the game, that can just be all you need need to really just take off and win from there. You've also got ways to disrupt their graveyard. The graveyard, again, is where all the Gouki monsters are able to get all of their searching. So if you know you're going up against a Gouki opponent, let's say you have a card like Abyss Dweller, make that Abyss Dweller, because since it's a lingering effect, even if they threaten the Abyss Dweller, they're not going to be getting any searches for the duration of that turn, since it will negate all the effects of those monsters that hit the graveyard. You could also use a card like Soul Drain. This was a popular card way back and kind of, you know, pops up every now and then. Being able to negate those effects is very good. And then there's also a card like Different Dimension Ground, which will banish all the monsters, and that applies twofold, because not only are you going to prevent the Gouki monsters from searching, they're not going to be able to recur them with a card like Gouki Rematch, but they're also not going to be able to banish them for cards like Divine Sword Phoenix Blade, and by just banishing their entire just slew of monsters, it's really going to slow them down and just cripple their ability to play. So these are some very good options for going first. But what about those instances where you don't open that hand trap, you don't open any cards to disrupt them going first, and they're able to assemble just this massive board that seems unbreakable? Well, there are some options for that. The first option is Kaiju. As we all know, if you just tribute the fuck over it, you can put yourself in a very good position. Now, when you have all these different Link monsters here, sometimes a Kaiju might not cut it, because, you know, you've got Goblin negating targeting effects, Cerberus negating destruction effects, Phoenix preventing them from being destroyed by battle, you've got Trigate Wizard to worry about. There's a lot of components here, and Kaijus are kind of only good when there's only one or two things that you really have to deal with. I think Gouki has a lot more. Now, you could just get rid of the Trigate Wizard, because by getting rid of that, that means they don't have any form of negation, and that way at least your cards are going to go off. But you still have to worry about the fact that you can't target them, you can't destroy them. There's a lot of things you can't really do. Alternatively, Cyber Dragon's a good option, because again, it doesn't waste your normal summon, and you're able to use a card like Chimera Tech Mega Fleet Dragon in the instance of them extra linking, because you can get rid of their 2 cards in the extra monster zone, summon the Mega Fleet, and you pretty much just outed their extra link. You most likely turned off their Trigate Wizard, and then you can proceed to, you know, normal summon and play out the rest of your turn. Not the best option, but some decks might want to utilize this, especially if they're able to take advantage of something like Toon Table of Contents, since that makes Cyber Dragon searchable. Just kind of an alternative to something like a Kaiju. I mean, I know Sky Strikers were notorious for playing Toon Table of Contents, so it's something you just might want to keep your eye on. There's also cards like Lava Golem, which contribute 2 monsters, but I think the best card for this situation is Winged Dragon of Raw Sphere Mode. Being able to tribute 3 of your opponent's monsters is absolutely huge. You can get rid of the Trigate Wizard, you can get rid of the target negation, you can get rid of the destruction prevention. Pretty much, it just gets rid of all the cards you don't want to deal with in a particular instance. It does use your normal summon, but if your deck can still special summon and do plenty of other things, you've essentially just broken their entire board. And the nice thing about that is they had to invest a lot of resources to make that board in the first place. Essentially, extra linking you is Gouki's win condition, and so by using that Sphere Mode and just completely decimating their board, you should be in a winning position and be able to completely swing the game back around in your favor. The last card I did want to touch on is Evenly Matched, because although they have cards that can prevent targeting, prevent destruction, do all these different things, if you're able to bait out that Trigate Wizard with 1 card, then you can just drop Evenly Matched, because Evenly Matched plays around every single card that the Gouki board has. So this is a very good method for pretty much just leveling out the playing field, and again, it does require you to bait out that Trigate Wizard, so that could be the only difficult part, but the thing about that is that if you have it in tandem with something like a Kaiju, or maybe some way to just tribute over the Trigate Wizard in the first place, that can be an explosive combination, and you should be able to win the game from there. So guys, those are just my thoughts. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think on your best options for beating Gouki. I'd really love to hear your thoughts. Guys, thank you so much for watching the video. Be sure to like the video as always. Subscribe to the channel for more amazing Yu-Gi-Oh content, and if you found this video helpful, consider backing me on Patreon, because just by pledging only $1 a month, you're investing in my ability to continue bringing you amazing Yu-Gi-Oh content. So thanks so much again, and we'll see you next time. 1, 2, 3.